Derby Wars, racing's biggest contest site, is now even bigger with more than 200 games every day. Check out Survivor, Derby Wars' hottest new game. It's fun, easy to play, and for just $4 you could win $1,000. Just pick a horse to finish first, second, or third and advance to the next race. With daily payouts and games starting every hour, you'll see why fans are racing to play Survivor. Go to DerbyWars.com now, use promo code Survivor to get 5 free Survivor games with your first deposit.
Welcome to a very special edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the great pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Schiffman. How are you today, Matt?
I'm feeling very special today, Brian, because I'm doing HorseCenter.
It's always a special day when we do HorseCenter, Matt. I agree with you. But today, folks, we are going to review the first half of the racing season, the first half of 2016. Matt and Zipsy, we're going to go back and look at our favorite performances since there have been 6 months complete. Matt, I'm calling June complete, by the way. 6 months completed. We're going to do our top 6. We're going to relive the best from 2016. Let's enjoy the ride, everyone. Matt, let's start with number 1. It happened recently. It happened at Belmont Park. It was Belmont Stakes Day, but it wasn't the Belmont Stakes.
It was not. It was the Brian Zipsy Stakes. It was the Brian Zipsy horse. It was Frosted.
Let's not make this about me, Matt. Frosted was the star of the show on Belmont Stakes Day. Everybody knows it.
Without question, Brian. And Frosted turned in one of the greatest performances, not just of 2016, but of recent years, as was indicated after the race with his 123 Beyer speed figure and his negative 8.5 thorograph number, which apparently, I'm not a thorograph guy, but apparently is just a beyond belief kind of number. And when we were at the race, watching the race, and it was just that kind of breathtaking performance coming down the stretch.
Yeah, coming down the stretch, Matt, he was in a perfect stalking position for much of the way. Pretty fast fractions, as we often see in the Met Mile, which, by the way, is always year in, year out one of my favorite races, Matt, at Belmont Park. Perfect stalking position under Joel Rosario, and he just exploded at the top of the lane. As a big Frosted fan that everyone knows that I am, it's hard for me not to mix reality a little bit with hyperbole, but frankly, it was the best performance that I've seen a racehorse run in this century, in the 21st century. We're 16 years in now to this century, and that's how good it was. I guess the numbers back me up for the most part, whether you're talking about time form, whether you're talking about Beyer, whether you're talking about Brisnet. Thorograph came in off the charts. Now, people pay a lot of money for these numbers, Matt. This is serious business what Thorograph does, and they work on a scale. The lower the number, the better. We've often seen big performances get into the negatives, but no, negative 8.5 was never, ever seen before on Thorograph.
Yeah, with the Thorograph numbers, it's not a typical thing for handicappers to use. I know a lot of trainers, when they're looking at evaluating competition in a race and where they're going to go with horses and what to do with their horse, a lot of trainers pay that top dollar to see those Thorograph numbers.
Thorograph is no fly-by-night, no hillbilly operation, if you will, Matt. And when they said it's the best number of all time, whether that was the best race since Thorograph has started or not, it obviously is one of the best performances in their existence, and that's a special performance. Yes, it made me happy, but now we want to see more from Frosted. We want to see this kind of performance again, maybe not quite this performance, because like we just said, it was off the charts, but we want to see him go to the Whitney and then races beyond and bring the best Frosted, because he hasn't always been the most consistent horse. Lots of good races, lots of good performances in losing efforts, a lot of them to American Pharoah, but now we want to see the good, consistent Frosted every time. Will we see it in the Whitney, Matt?
You know, Brian, I hope that we will, and one of the things that I hope our HorseCenter fans will see from a lot of the horses that are on this list is that they're older horses, and I'm really, really starting to believe that Frosted is an example of a son of Tappet, and those Tappets can be very, very spirited and very, very high strung when they're young. And I really believe that Frosted is an example of a Tappet that is now maturing, getting older, figuring out how to do the best job he can on the racetrack. And I'm going to be really interested to see in the next race if that theory of mine holds true.
Me too, Matt. And I think you make a very good point. Horses, as I mentioned in my article yesterday, horses do turn the corner eventually. I mentioned in the article, I mentioned Forgo and Cigar as two extreme examples of turning the corner. Forgo was a decent horse, but he just kept getting better and better. Yeah, many of the horses on our list are older horses. Now, it's been said after the jaw-dropping, breathtaking, awe-inspiring, sensational, spectacular performance of Frosted in the Met Mile that he's a one-turn horse. I don't buy that, Matt. I saw how well he ran in the Belmont Stakes. I saw how well he ran in the Travers, the Kentucky Derby, Penn Derby, lots of two-turn races. So I'm not buying it. What do you think?
Like you said, Brian, he has run well on two turns before. That was, some of them were last year. If you do believe that he is a better horse, then why shouldn't the next time out he run his best race going two turns?
And that will be August 6th, the Whitney Handicap, the 1.25 rich in history and prestige, Grade 1 Whitney Handicap, August 6th at the Empire of Dirt there in Saratoga Springs. Saratoga, we can't wait for Saratoga, Matt. Another horse that we may see at Saratoga, well, she'll be there, but we don't know if she's going to race yet, is Tappan. One of our favorite races of the year actually happened in England. Jolly old England, Royal Ascot. It was Tappan. It was the Queen Anne. And Matt, I think every American race fan felt good after watching Tappan win the Queen Anne.
The Queen of the Turf, Tappan, wins the Queen Anne. 4 for 4 this year. Tappan, we've talked about Tappan before, and beating the boys, traveling across the pond, doing all the things that she does with such flair and class and talent. You have to love Tappan, and right now she's one of the two best horses in the country, in my opinion.
Well, Tappan's been marvelous, Matt. I've gone on record as saying no one on a consistent basis throughout the year has been actually better than Tappan. I mentioned Frosted was my race of the year and then some, but Tappan, now 5 for 5, Matt. 2 races at Tampa Bay. She caught a loose on the lead. Isabella Sings in one of them. She's won at Churchill Downs. She's won at Keeneland. She's just been something truly special this year, building upon what she did last year. And it begs the question, Matt, what's next for Tappan? The easy thing would be to see her run maybe once at Saratoga, maybe not, maybe in the Woodbine Mile, and then point again towards the Breeders' Cup Mile again to defend her championship, much like many horses have done. Wise Dan, Miesk, Allure, Goldakova on a couple of occasions repeated. But you know what? Her trainer, Norm Cassie, the man that's with her more than anything, he reminded me that Tappan's first big stakes win was actually on dirt. It was as a 2-year-old. It was in Delta Downs. It was the Delta Downs Princess. I guess that would have been 3 years ago. He kind of opened the door. I don't know how serious he is and how realistic this is to take her off the turf, but he certainly opened the door. Maybe Tappan will try a dirt race before the year's over. That would be interesting.
That would be interesting. That would be pretty cool. And if she could run back to that form on the dirt, it would just be another feather in her cap to be able to, run at the top level on more than one surface. Again, it's like we talked about. Here's an older horse that, can now do so many things so easily now that they've matured.
Yeah, I think what Matt's telling us, folks, is that going to the breeding shed after your 3-year-old season might not be the best thing for American racing or for these horses, for that matter. So it is nice to see Frosted 4, Tappan 5. We're going to talk about another 5-year-old and old as we move forward. But before we go, Matt, Tappan, Royal Ascot, that's one of the biggest meets in Europe. The Queen Anne was an important mile with a lot of very good milers from Europe in there. I think deep down a lot of Europeans didn't think she could do it. I remember, I want to say about a quarter century ago when Leo O'Brien brought his nice New York bred 3-year-old 4 Stars All-Star over to win the Irish Guineas. That felt good as an American fan back then. This one feels even better. This is pretty important for American turf racing on a whole, don't you think?
Yeah, Brian, not very many years ago, turf racing was an afterthought here in the U.S. It was something that happened, a bit more in Saratoga in some of the elite summer meets and things. But with horses that we've had recently, likewise, Dan, and like Tappan, turf racing has really, really amped up its importance in this country. It's good for the horses. It's kind to the horses. And it's nice for us to be able to compete on an international basis for those Euros to it's going to be tougher and tougher for them to turn their nose up and say, oh, they just race on the dirt. They're not as good as we are. Well, hey, Tappan beat you on your home turf. Tappan beat you in America last year. Come on over and take on our runners.
There you go, Matt. You're making some great points today, may I add. But yeah, the Europeans have turned their nose up to our turf horses in the past. What Tappan did was special, and yeah, I think it is a resurgence of American turf racing. Turf racing used to be bigger in this country. It's coming back again, and that's nice to see. But we're going to go back to the dirt, Matt. We're going to go to the most prestigious race in America. It's not the richest. It's probably not the most important as we look for the year-end Horse of the Year title, but Nyquist, Kentucky Derby. He was still undefeated at that point, and people forget he's had a loss since then. The Kentucky Derby was a big race, faced all the best 3-year-olds in the country to that point, 8 for 8, and he did it in impressive fashion, Matt.
Yep, and it's easy to forget these things, but like you said, Brian, he was undefeated. He came out of the race undefeated. It's the biggest race of the year for the marquee division 3-year-olds, and if you take a look back at the Derby field and what some of the horses have done that Nyquist has beaten, and I know Nyquist lost in the Preakness, and we're all waiting to see his return shortly. But in the Derby, Exaggerator came back and won the Preakness. Gunrunner came back and won the Matt Win. Destin finished second in the Belmont. Motom came back and won the Ohio Derby. Tom's Ready came back and ran a huge race in the Woody Stevens. Creator came back and won the Belmont. You can't not have Nyquist's Derby victory on this list. And I don't think Nyquist is one of those horses that's going to win the Derby and done like we've seen in the past, like with Orb, like with Mind That Bird. I don't think Nyquist is one of those, Brian.
Oh, not at all, Matt. In fact, the Preakness, I thought it was a big performance. It may have been his first defeat. It may have ended his Triple Crown run, Matt. But the Nyquist run in the Preakness was big. He was between horses. He ran so fast early. It was probably a track that helped Exaggerator anyway. He got a little tired late and got nipped for second, but Nyquist ran a hell of a race in the Preakness. That is no shame to him at all. Really good 3-year-old, definitely the leader of the division. We're waiting to see, Matt, whether it's the San Diego Handicap, potentially against California Chrome, possibly the Jim Dandy, where he faces Exaggerator and more there. Maybe the Haskell, where he'll meet a Baffert horse or two, and of course Gunrunner. So that's interesting to see where he comes back. But the Kentucky Derby was a crowning achievement for, at the time, an undefeated 2-year-old champion who proved he was just as good, if not better, at 3, and he will be back, and that's exciting. Matt, yeah, Exaggerator, Mo Heyman, Gunrunner, Sudden Breaking News, Creator, Motom, the list goes on. Who am I forgetting? Brody's Cause, Destin, so many good horses in that Derby. This will hold up as a huge win for Nyquist, a deserving Kentucky Derby win, and one that may very well be the deciding factor for the 3-year-old champion. Now, in the Horse of the Year race, we're probably talking about a leader that has only run once in America. But of course, California Chrome did it just like Tappan did it overseas. He did it in the world's richest race, or what is going to be the richest race now, just for another 6, 7, 8 months here. The Dubai World Cup, Matt, it was huge. He also beat a very good field, and California Chrome did it convincingly.
Yep. You can't knock anything California Chrome has done this year, and his performance in the World Cup was so strong that he deserves to be on our list here. And you mentioned the richest races. It's really clear that the ownership and the team of California Chrome, they've got their eyes set on the richest races over the next 6 months, or maybe a little bit more. California Chrome could end up putting together a career earnings total that is just beyond imagination right now.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Matt. I did have the pleasure of speaking with Art Sherman a few days ago, and some of the things that I think he was reiterating was that California Chrome is that money title matters to him, and they don't want to stop where they are. They want to keep going, and those rich races are important to them, as it's important to everyone. So Breeders' Cup Classic, Pegasus World Cup next January, they're all on California Chrome's dance card right now. Now, California Chrome, another thing that Art Sherman really emphasized with me was he's so happy to have him as a 5-year-old. He's just a bigger, stronger, better horse than he ever was. And so far in his first 3 races this year, Matt, it's really bore out. The Dubai World Cup was the biggest of the 3, as it should be, because that's what he was working towards the first half of the year. Now he's going to start working towards the Breeders' Cup Classic. We don't know. Maybe California Chrome, who was the horse of the year as a 3-year-old, is really just that much better, and he could be well on his way. And this is coming from a Frosted fan. He could be well on his way to another horse of the year title.
It's up to him. If he performs the way he has been, the horse of the year title is his to take. My question right now is, though, who's going to run against him, Brian? You mentioned Nyquist earlier. I don't see Nyquist taking on California Chrome right now. I think he's going to head east to the Haskell and or the Travers and the Jim Dandy. I don't know who's going to be willing to take on Chrome until they have to in the Classic, when all these different paths are going to converge for the big race of the year.
Yeah, I think that's true, Matt. I think you're talking about Frosted, you're talking about Melatonin, you're talking about the top 3-year-olds topped by Nyquist. That would be the Breeders' Cup Classic when they get their shot at California Chrome. And yeah, assuming Nyquist doesn't go into San Diego, which I think is probably more likely than not that he won't go there, then the San Diego probably becomes a pretty simple race for Chrome. But one race after that, you're talking Beholder, and remember what Beholder did in the Pacific Classic last year. So let's not think that the road's going to be too easy for California Chrome just yet. And speaking of not too easy, let's talk about a horse that might not be on the list of top 10 horses in America, not on the Horse of the Year race at all, Matt, but he's 10 years old. He's still running huge. He won his 5th Jim McKay this year, and he did that in just thrilling fashion, getting through between horses, lunging at the wire, knowing where the wire was. Of course, I'm talking about Ben's Cat, King Leatherberry's marvelous 10-year-old turf sprinter. I say turf sprinter, but he's won around 2 turns. He's won on dirt many times. How cool was watching the Jim McKay this year for you, Matt?
It was just amazing, and I hope the fans, while we're talking, can enjoy that stretch run there and see this 10-year-old just squeeze between horses. And another win number 32, Brian Zipsy, in 56 career starts, $2.6 million. $2.6 million. And he's picking that up, in relatively small persons, in 100 grand races, 150, 75 grand races. He's not picking that up in 3 shots. and like we said, the theme that we have with a lot of these horses is look at what these horses can do as they get older. Of course, if they're in good condition, if they're up to still racing, which Ben's Cat still is.
One chunk at a time, Matt, and that's what he did in that 5 furlong race. One chunk at a time, he reeled in the horses he needed to beat, and it was a special race. That was my choice as kind of we had our top four, then that was my choice as the dark horse race of the year, performance of the year. It was a great thing to watch. Ben's Cat at 10 years old, ladies and gentlemen, 10 years old, still getting it done at a pretty high level. Ben's Cat winning his 5th Jim McKay Stakes. You can't do that if you retire at 3, folks. Matt, your dark horse choice was a little surprising to me in that this is a 3-year-old filly that's not named Songbird.
Yeah, Brian, I was looking for a race that had a really strong field and a really strong performance, and I ended up thinking about that 3-year-old filly division, which maybe is one of the most stacked and talented divisions out there. And I came upon Kareena Mia in the Acorn Stakes, where she just faced a great field with Catherine Sophia and Go Maggie Go. And this is a horse that is getting better. And in the 3-year-old division, which, as you mentioned, includes the great Songbird and also Rachel's Valentina, who's getting ready to come back in the Mother's Goose. It's a division where we could see some other really competitive races. And yes, Songbird is not on this list, and I think that's just because her races have just been so easy. There's been no competition in her races. It doesn't take anything away from the wonderful talent that she has. And I think you and I both look forward to her coming east and maybe running into some of those other talented 3-year-old fillies that I mentioned.
Yeah, Matt, you're dead on. Kareena Mia is a filly I've liked for some time. She showed a ton of talent as a speed filly as a 2-year-old, and then earlier in her 3-year-old filly year, she had some trouble with getting out of her training track in Florida due to a quarantine. So she missed the Oaks. She was spectacular that weekend, though, in a 7-furlong graded stakes, the 8 Bells. And frankly, Matt, in the 2 weeks leading up to the Kentucky Derby, where I was out there every morning, Kareena Mia was one of the stars. We didn't talk about her as much as some of the others because she wasn't running in the Kentucky Derby or even the Kentucky Oaks, but Kareena Mia just looked fantastic in those 2 weeks before the Oaks and the Derby. It's come to roost in the next 2 races because they were huge. Bill Mott has a big decision whether to keep her at 1 turn, where she's done so well in the 8 Bells and then the Acorn, your highlighted race here, or stretch her out to 2 turns. If she does stretch out to 2 turns, she's the number 2 rated 3-year-old filly in the country right now. She's likely to face Songbird in the Coaching Club American Oaks. Songbird, that's not 100% on either yet. Songbird is definitely pointing for the Alabama. But if they hook up in the Coaching Club American Oaks, as good as Kareena Mia looked in your Acorn, I think it's an interesting race, and I'm excited to see it. 6 races, Matt. I think we did pretty good, and I think more than that, the horses of the first 6 months, the first half of 2016, have done very well.
They certainly have, Brian. And if all 6 of these continue to perform the way they have, along with a bunch of other horses that we mentioned that aren't on the list, like Songbird, like Beholder, we got a great second half of 2016 to look forward to, HorseCenter fans.
Yeah, Flintshire I would throw on that list as well. And how about Melatonin? Folks, this was a special edition of HorseCenter recapping the best performances of the first half of 2016. We're going to be back next week with a show that talks about all the big races for a 2-week stretch, including Melatonin, including Mo Tom. We're also going to be looking to performances happening this holiday weekend. Rachel's Valentina returns in the Mother Goose. Private Zone returns in the Smile. Maybe Sheer Drama down in the Princess Rooney. And Matt, our highlight race of the week will be up north of the border. It's the 157th running, Matt. That is the longest continuously run race in North America. Of course, I'm talking about the Queen's Plate. the Kentucky Derby of Canadian racing. That'll be our highlight race, Matt. It's Sunday, July 3rd, up at Woodbine. Amy's Gizmo. I'm looking at a filly named Gamble's Ghost as a possible upsetter, but there's a number of interesting horses in there, and as always, the Queen's Plate will have a big field, so we're looking forward to that one.
Yep, Brian, and Woodbine's a wonderful racetrack. They have a really interesting turf course up there.
They do run both ways nowadays, Matt. They run left to right and right to left, so lots of reasons to visit Woodbine.
Yep, and we talked about the best races of 2016 here, and we want to thank our best producer, Ember Marr.
Ember Marr, and she's the best, Matt, but we also need to thank all our viewers. Thank you for continuing to watch. Our main sponsor, of course, is Derby Wars, the best contest site out there. We're going to be back next week with a recap of all those big races and a look ahead to some great July racing. We'll see you then.